So let's kick off. Well, today I have the great honor of speaking with Bernie Capraro. And Bernie is Research Manager at Silicon Technology at the Intel Research and Development Ireland. And we will chat about Intel Unleashed, preparing for the future. Hi, Bernie. How are you doing today?
Hey, Patricia, I'm great. Thanks for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
And it's an honor for us to have you here today, Bernie. So, first question for you, as always, Bernie, is where are you located and what's been keeping you going over the last few months of lockdown?
Well, I'm in Dunshaughlin, out in County Meath, and many people know that I'm an avid road cyclist. So I've been keeping out on the bike all the way through those 2 kilometre and 5 kilometre restriction zones. I think I know every pebble, every crack in the roads around Dunshaughlin at this point, and I'm just glad now that I can venture further afield, enjoying myself.
Absolutely sounds wonderful, Bernie. So, we are all very intrigued as to your title, so Intel Unleashed. And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about this and about Intel, their mission, and what they do.
Well, Intel, as most people probably know, is a designer and manufacturer of semiconductor chips. So designing and manufacturing that is known as an integrated device manufacturer, or an IDM. And we've been doing this now for over 50 years. And what Intel is really famous for is this thing called Moore's Law, named after one of our co-founders, Gordon Moore, who, before he founded Intel in 1968, he wrote a paper in 1965, and he predicted that every couple of years, the number of transistors in an integrated circuit would double. And that's held true for 5 decades plus. You know, our first microprocessor that Intel built in 1972 had only 2,300 transistors. And the transistor count in the PCs that you're probably using to view this call today, we're talking now billions, at least 1 billion transistors. So pretty phenomenal. And it's not just about increasing the number of transistors, which improves the functionality of the chip, but it's also about reducing the power consumption, making those chips more power efficient, but also reducing the cost per transistor as well. So these things become more and more affordable, which then drives the demand from the consumers. And we're seeing now in the world the digitization of everything. It's been really enhanced during the pandemic, as you can imagine, with everything that we do, work, learn, and play is all done on computer. So you know the need for these devices is going up. Now, Intel, you know, it has this mission that it wants to impact positively, make the lives better of every person on the planet, and that's what we're trying to do. We have a new CEO, just started in February, a guy called Pat Gelsinger, who actually is a 30-year veteran of Intel. He started work in his career with Intel, and he worked with the founders, but then he left to pursue other opportunities and became the CEO of a software company. So he's now back to us as both a hardware and a software specialist. He's a real technology geek, and he's bringing lots of energy and drive back to the company, and really pushing this idea of manufacturing, how important that is. And what we're seeing across the world in sites in Oregon, Arizona, New Mexico, Israel, and now Ireland, expansions of our manufacturing capability. And also we're opening up our technology to the rest of the world. We're also becoming a foundry so that we can build chips for other people as well. They design the chips and we make them. So it's really exciting right now here at Intel, particularly in America and as Europe, as we look at this re-establishing of semiconductor manufacturing to balance up the supply across the globe. So I think, Patricia.
Yeah, fantastic. I actually was just going to ask you about Ireland, and I think this would be really exciting for our audience to hear about it. And I think you might have a video for us to watch.
Yeah, I'd be delighted if let's hope the technology holds out. I'll share my screen. The computer sound, let's see. And I'll play it away.
Super.
Oops.
Wow, Bernie, just before we open up to the audience, maybe you can tell us about this doubling the manufacturer capacity.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you can see there, it's probably, if not the biggest, one of the biggest building sites in the country right now. Um, so it does, in fact, double the manufacturing capacity of our fleet of fabs here in Leixlip. Very exciting times, 1,600 high-tech jobs. That sounds quite daunting, but we have an excellent reputation and history in being successful in attracting excellent hires, graduate and experience to fulfill these roles. We hire from level 6, diplomas all the way through to PhD level 10. And this is the reason why it's really important for us to have an excellent interaction with our education partners, all the way from primary. You might have heard of our mini scientist competition, all the way through secondary into third level. And we have a good series of what we call our memorandums of understanding with universities across Ireland, with 3 pillars of activity: the talent pipeline development, my research activity that we do in silicon technology, and also policy and strategy, all designed for the task of acquiring that talent for the future.
Wow, it's so exciting, Bernie. And we have so many questions coming in for you. And actually, there's a lot of questions on you, Bernie, on this silicon technology and semiconductor research and semiconductor research. Yeah, sorry. So I'm just reading them out here. So maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we engage in the fundamental science part, the basic research or the pre-competitive research right at the start of the R&D chain, if you will. We're looking at new advanced materials, maybe design architecture of these little transistors and processing methods. And we're looking for those kind of yes, no answers. Will this material fit in our very complex process flow? Yes or no? And we've been going now for, almost 2 decades. We have really good partnerships with the SFI centers across the country. And I'd like to pay tribute to them. They do a fantastic job. In fact, we have won 4 outstanding researcher awards across Ireland over the last 15 years for this fundamental research that we do. We utilize that excellent research infrastructure, and we run a small team of researchers in residence who work with me in these university labs, and I think they do a fantastic job interfacing with the principal investigators in the centers and also with our customers in corporate research out in America. So that's really what it is. It's those early learnings, if you will. Will this material work? Does this device architecture make sense, etc.? So that's what we do.
Okay, and actually, just a couple of questions coming in around that. It kind of sounds to me, and you know how passionate we are in discovery, UC discovery, about interdisciplinarity. It sounds that interdisciplinarity plays a strong role in that aspect of your job.
Well, I think that's a really important and interesting point. It really does play an important role. You bring yourself to the job. You might have a technical skill, but also music or anything artistic can also add. The interdisciplinary ways of thinking. I have a daughter who has always enjoyed swimming since 6 months old. We had her in the pool very early on having lessons. And I remember the instructor shouting at her, 2 kick, 4 kick, 6 kick. And she just didn't really quite understand what that was. And just the feet were flapping faster. And then she started music and got to understand music theory and what have you. And then she suddenly got it. Oh, yeah, the rhythm. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. And all of a sudden, then she's moving through the water faster and more efficiently. So 2 ways of thinking there. Other ideas we have in one of our university engagements, I think called an employability award, where we bring students on site when COVID times allow, to do workshops and things like creative thinking, problem solving. And the last one we ran actually just before the pandemic, the winner of that particular year was a psychology student, was able to really display really excellent problem solving skills. So it just shows you that, how important these things can be.
Hugely important, Bernie, hugely. And I couldn't agree with you more as a champion of interdisciplinarity in universities. But a lot of questions coming in about you, Bernie, and what pathway led you to such a career. Maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, you can probably tell from this accent, I'm not from Ireland originally. I've been in Ireland now 24 years, but I grew up in the UK. I was born in Yorkshire and moved up to Newcastle for my university, for my master's degree. And this was a 4.5 year master's degree course, but we had to do 2 periods of industrial training or internship during that course. And this was way back in 1987, when the UK was just embarking on this Erasmus program. And one of the lecturers asked me one day, "Hey, Bernie, how do you fancy going to Germany for your first placement? Can you speak German?" No. He said, "Well, there's the language lab. You've got a week. Get in there and learn some German." So off I went. I took the opportunity. And a couple of weeks later, I find myself on a ferry and an overnight train from Zeebrugge to Heilbronn in South Germany, and ended up in a fab in a place called Telefunken in Heilbronn. And I was blown away, literally, when I walked through into the clean room for the first time. I say blown away, you had to go through an air shower, so it's a bit of a pun, really. But I walked into this clean room and I thought, wow, this is just another world. And I really enjoyed it. I put everything into it. I did my best to learn the language. And I was invited back for my second placement. I then asked if I could go back and work for 2 summers. And then I was asked, would you like to do your final year project here as well? We have a research topic that we could do with your help on. So I turned that opportunity into a real adventure where I learned the culture, language for free, and had great friends that I still have. But then ultimately, because I loved it so much, it turned into my career. And I always, as an engineer, thought I would try to have an impact on the world. So that work there at Telefunken, and then my first job after graduation was all to do with building out the superhighway, the communication systems that we have now under the ocean, spanning the continents, that enable the internet. And then coming to a place like Intel, helping to build out the internet so we can all use it. It's just been a phenomenal experience.
Super. And actually, questions around, I suppose, community work and tech initiatives. You said earlier you did a lot about the university with the universities, but maybe this is where these questions are coming in. So community work, pandemic responses, or any unexpected opportunities during the pandemic that you want to tell us about?
Well, I think many companies around the world have jumped in, haven't they, through the pandemic? I mean, I think Ireland's been phenomenal. I pay tribute to all the companies that, have donated, PPE, for example. We've all done that. But Intel came up with the idea of a pandemic relief technology initiative, where the idea would be to leverage our technology to help with the pandemic relief. The health and life sciences and education in particular, I think, have really been impacted big time by this pandemic. So $50 million was handing out, and I think we had something like 230 projects across the world involved with 170 organizations. It was such a phenomenal thing. It's so good that it's actually been extended this year as well. Another 20 million has been put in. But it really, as I mentioned, the educational gap, it really showed the difference between those areas that have IT infrastructure and those that don't. So we tried to help with that. And even with you guys there in UCD, we partnered with you and we put some laptops out there. I think it was with the Peter McVerry Trust that works with homeless hubs in the Dublin region. So we were able to give hardware to students who wouldn't necessarily have been able to do their schooling. So that was one thing on the education side. And then on the health side, our Intel Movidius team, the visual processing group, we're working with a small startup called Capraro Robotics. And I believe the word Akara comes from the Irish word for friend. So they developed a robot, which was really cool, actually. It was designed to be a companion to old folks living alone, maybe a little bit of dementia creeping in. It was meant to keep them engaged and what have you. But they turned that robot that was called Stevie into another robot called Violet, which was using ultraviolet technology and vision processing technology that could go into hospital wards and disinfect the rooms. So they could do it up to 8 times faster than a human. But the important thing was they weren't using a human. That person was used to take care of the patients. So things like that have really happened. And then you look across our manufacturing technician population right across Ireland and the world. Like, you see these really great initiatives like 3D printing screens for the health workers. And I even saw one example of a technician out in Oregon who'd converted his garage into a wood shop and was making desks for school kids to do their homework, from home. It's
Wow.
really fantastic to see.
That's incredible response. And actually, we are completely running out of time, but they're just very quickly, Bernie, because there's a lot of questions coming in around when is the recruitment starting for the 1,600 jobs? And kind of, so when is the recruitment starting, and what proportion of them will be in STEM?
Well, I would say, first of all, at least 90+% of them will be technical roles.
Wow.
So that's the first thing to say. The factory's still being built, as you can see from the video. So it won't be a big step function of hiring. What we'll do is do this gradually as the building is completed, probably starting towards the end of this year, going through next year and into the beginning of the following year, 23. So what I will say is just keep an eye on Intel jobs at Intel Ireland on the web. If you're a student in one of the universities, keep in touch with your careers center. And most of the heads of department know me, so you can get to me very easily as well. And I'm very happy to share the information when it's available. But please watch this space. It's happening.
Wow, so exciting. And unfortunately, we are absolutely completely out of time. So sincere apologies to all of those whose questions I did not get to today. But I wanted to take this opportunity to say an absolutely huge thanks to Bernie for such a fascinating discussion today. Thank you so much, Bernie.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernie, and thanks everyone for joining in. You can sign up for our series at zoomforthought.ie, where you can also see a list of our upcoming speakers for the rest of 2021. So thank you so much, everyone, and see you all soon on Zoom for Thought. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.